My name is Sylvie Marchetti. I am 29 years old. And I am about to tell you a story I swore I would take to my grave. But some truths refuse to stay buried. It started the day I moved into that apartment. The old Victorian on Chestnut Street. The one with the crooked shutters and the garden that hadn't bloomed in years. I remember standing on the sidewalk, looking up at the building, feeling something I couldn't name. Not fear exactly. More like recognition. Like I had been there before, even though I knew I hadn't. The landlord was waiting for me inside the foyer. His name was Harold Finch. Older man, maybe late 60s. Gray hair combed perfectly. Wire-rimmed glasses. He wore a cardigan even though it was September and still warm outside. His hands trembled slightly when he held the keys. But his eyes were what I noticed most. They looked tired. Not from lack of sleep. Tired from something deeper. Something that had been draining him for a very long time. He showed me the apartment slowly, room by room. The kitchen was small but functional. The living room had tall windows that faced the street. The bedroom was tucked in the back, quiet and dark. Everything seemed fine. Normal. Almost boring. Then we reached the hallway near the bathroom. And Harold stopped walking. He turned to face me. His expression changed. The polite smile disappeared. Something harder took its place. Something careful. "There's one thing you need to know," he said quietly. I waited. "There's a room at the end of this hallway. The back room." He pointed to a door I hadn't noticed before. It was painted the same color as the wall. Like someone had tried to hide it. "That door stays closed at all times. Do you understand?" I remember frowning. "Is there something wrong with it? Mold? Structural issues?" "No," he said flatly. "Nothing like that." "Then why can't I go in there?" He didn't answer immediately. His jaw tightened. He looked at the door, then back at me, then at the door again. "Because I'm asking you not to," he finally said. "That's the condition of this rental. You never open that door. Not for any reason. Not ever." I should have asked more questions. I should have demanded an explanation. But I was 29 years old, desperate for an apartment I could actually afford, and honestly, I thought he was just eccentric. Old man quirks. Every landlord has something strange. So I smiled and said, "Of course. No problem." And, just like that, I signed the lease. Before we continue, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Tell me in the comments, would you have opened the door? Or would you have kept your promise? Now, let me tell you what happened next. The first week was uneventful. I unpacked my boxes, arranged my furniture, hung photos on the walls. The apartment started to feel like mine. Every morning I walked past that door on my way to the bathroom. Every morning I glanced at it. And every morning I told myself it was nothing. A locked door is just a locked door. But then came the first night. I woke up suddenly. No dream. No noise. Just awake. The kind of awake that feels wrong. Like your body knows something your mind hasn't figured out yet. I checked my phone. 2:47 a.m. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Coming from somewhere above me. But I lived on the top floor. My heart started beating faster. I sat up in bed, listening. The footsteps continued for maybe 30 seconds. Then they stopped. Then I heard something else. A door opening. Then closing. Then silence. I told myself it was the building settling. Old pipes. Neighbors in another unit. Anything rational. Anything that would let me go back to sleep. But I didn't sleep. Not really. I lay there with my eyes open, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the footsteps to return. They didn't. The next morning, I checked the hallway. The back room door was still closed. Still locked. Nothing seemed different. I almost convinced myself I had imagined the whole thing. Almost. The second night, it happened again. Exactly the same. Footsteps at 2:47 a.m. A door opening. A door closing. Silence. The third night, I stayed awake on purpose. I wanted to catch whatever was happening. I sat in my living room with a glass of water, facing the hallway, watching the door. 2:47 a.m. came. Nothing happened. I waited until 3:30. Still nothing. I laughed at myself, called myself ridiculous, and went back to bed. But the next morning, I noticed something strange. The door to the back room was slightly open. Just a crack. Maybe an inch. But I knew it had been closed the night before. I knew it had been locked. I had checked. I stood in the hallway for a long time, staring at that crack. Part of me wanted to push the door open. Part of me wanted to run out of the apartment and never come back. Instead, I walked over. Slowly. My bare feet cold on the wooden floor. I reached out my hand. And then I heard a voice. Not loud. Not clear. Just a whisper from inside the room. I couldn't make out the words. But I recognized the tone. It was crying. Someone in that room was crying. I pulled my hand back like I had been burned. I backed away from the door. I didn't sleep in the apartment that night. I grabbed my keys and drove to my mother's house at 3 a.m. She didn't ask questions. She just made me tea and let me cry on her couch. The next day, I called Harold Finch. He didn't answer. I left a message. Then another. Then another. 3 days passed. Nothing. So I did something I probably shouldn't have. I went back to the apartment during the day. Sunlight was still pouring through the windows. Everything looked normal. Safe. I almost convinced myself again that I had overreacted. But I couldn't stop thinking about that whisper. That crying. I decided to search the building. Maybe there was another tenant I didn't know about. Maybe someone else had a key to the back room. Maybe Harold was hiding something illegal. I walked down to the first floor. Knocked on every door. No one answered. The building felt empty. Too empty. Then I found the mailroom. There was a small closet near the entrance with mail slots for each unit. I checked the names. My name on 3B. A few others I didn't recognize. But every single slot except mine was empty. No mail. No names. No signs of life. I was the only tenant in the entire building. I called Harold again. This time, he answered. Mr. Finch, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. There's something happening in my apartment. Footsteps at night. Voices from the back room. I need to know what's in there. Silence on the line. Mr. Finch. I told you, he finally said. His voice was different. Quieter. Almost defeated. Never open that door. Then tell me why. Another long pause. I could hear him breathing. Slow. Unsteady. Some questions, he said, don't have answers that make things better. He hung up. That night, I didn't leave. I stayed in the apartment. I wanted to prove to myself that I was being irrational. That there was a logical explanation. That I wasn't losing my mind. 2:47 a.m. The footsteps started. But this time, they didn't stop at the back room. They kept coming. Closer. Closer. Until they were right outside my bedroom door. I held my breath. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. Then I heard the doorknob turn. But my bedroom door didn't open. The doorknob stopped halfway. Then turned back. Then stopped. Then the footsteps retreated. The back room door opened. Then closed. And then I heard something I will never forget. A woman's voice. Clear this time. Not crying. Speaking. Please, she said. Please don't leave me here. I didn't sleep for the next 2 days. I started researching the building. Old newspaper archives. Property records. Anything I could find online. The Victorian on Chestnut Street was built in 1892. Originally a single-family home. Converted into apartments in 1948. Harold Finch inherited it from his father in 1985. And before 1985, there was almost no record of anyone living there. No tenants. No complaints. No history at all. Except for one article. A local paper from 1973. Small piece on page 12. The headline read, Woman disappears from Chestnut Street home, police investigating. The woman's name was Eleanor Finch. Harold's wife. According to the article, Eleanor vanished on a Tuesday night. Her car was still in the garage. Her purse was on the kitchen table. Her bed was unmade, as if she had gotten up in the middle of the night and never returned. Police searched the house. They found nothing. No signs of struggle. No forced entry. No note. The case went cold. Eleanor Finch was never found. I sat in my living room, staring at the screen, my hands shaking. Harold's wife disappeared from that building. And now there was a locked room in my apartment that Harold refused to explain. A room where I heard crying. A room where a woman's voice begged not to be left behind. I knew what I had to do. And I was terrified. The next day, I went to the hardware store. I bought a crowbar. The cashier asked if I needed help finding anything else. I said no. I couldn't look him in the eyes. Back in the apartment, I stood in front of the back room door. The crowbar felt heavy in my hands. Too heavy. Please don't leave me here, the voice had said. I thought about Harold. About his trembling hands. About the way he looked at that door. About the warning he gave me on day one. Never open that door. But some warnings, I realized, aren't given to protect the room. They're given to protect the person opening it. I wedged the crowbar between the door and the frame. I pulled. The wood splintered. The lock broke. The door swung open. And I stepped inside. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Lavender. Old paper. And something else. Something I couldn't name. Something that made my chest tighten. The second thing I noticed was the walls. They were covered. Photographs. Dozens of them. Hundreds maybe. Taped to every surface. Photographs of a woman. Young. Dark hair. Bright eyes. Smiling in some photos. Serious in others. But always beautiful. Always watching. I recognized her face immediately. It was the same face I had seen in my dreams since I was a child. The same face I had drawn in notebooks without knowing why. The same face my mother once described when I asked her about the sister I never had. My hands started shaking. Tears filled my eyes. I didn't understand what I was seeing. But my body understood something my mind hadn't caught up to yet. I looked around the room. There was a bed in the corner. Made perfectly. A woman's clothes hanging in a small closet. Shoes lined up neatly. A hairbrush on a nightstand with strands of dark hair still in it. And on the desk in the center of the room, there was a letter. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold it. The handwriting was elegant. Feminine. The paper was yellowed with age. The letter was addressed to Harold. My dearest Harold, it began. If you are reading this, I am already gone. Not by choice. Never by choice. But there are things I never told you. Things I was too afraid to share. And now the time has come for you to know the truth. I stopped reading. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I turned the page. I was never meant to stay, the letter continued. I came into your life because someone sent me. Someone who needed to watch you. Someone who needed to make sure you never discovered what really happened to your first wife. My blood ran cold. First wife? I knew Harold had been married to Eleanor, the woman who disappeared. But first wife meant there was another marriage before her. A marriage Harold had never mentioned. A marriage that didn't appear in any records I had found. I kept reading. Her name was Margaret, the letter said. She died in this house. In this very room. And Harold was the reason she died. I dropped the letter. It floated to the floor like a dying bird. I looked around the room again. The photographs weren't of Eleanor. They weren't of a stranger. They were of me. The dark hair. The bright eyes. The smile. I was looking at my own face. But younger. Much younger. Photos taken decades before I was born. I didn't understand. I couldn't understand. But the letter on the floor had more to say. I picked it up with trembling fingers and read the final paragraph. Margaret was pregnant when she died, the letter revealed. The baby survived. Harold never knew. The baby was given to a family far from here. A family who raised her as their own. That baby grew up. Had a daughter. And that daughter is you. I am Sylvie Marchetti. I am 29 years old. And I just discovered that the woman in the photographs, the woman whose face I had seen in my dreams my entire life, was my grandmother, Margaret Finch, who died in this room, at the hands of the man I called my landlord, my grandfather. I sat on that floor for what felt like hours. The letter crumpled in my hands, tears soaking into my shirt. The final pages explained everything. Margaret Finch had discovered something terrible about Harold. Something he had done before they married. Something involving another woman. Another life. Harold couldn't face the truth. So he silenced Margaret instead. But Margaret was smarter than he knew. Before she died, she wrote everything down. She hid the letter in the one place Harold never looked, the room where she was kept. The room he sealed shut out of guilt. The room he never entered again. The baby, my mother, was smuggled out of the house by a maid who knew the truth. The maid raised her in secret. My mother grew up not knowing who she really was. She married, had me, and died when I was 12, never telling me about the grandmother I never met. But the dreams never stopped. Because some memories don't live in the mind. They live in the blood. They travel from mother to daughter. From grandmother to granddaughter. They wait to be discovered. And Harold knew. He knew the moment he saw me at the rental showing. He knew who I was. He knew I was Margaret's granddaughter. And he rented me that apartment anyway. Not out of kindness. Out of fear. He wanted to keep me close. To watch me. To make sure I never found the letter he had spent 40 years searching for. But he made one mistake. He told me never to open the door. And nothing in this world makes a person want to open a door more than being told they can't. I heard footsteps behind me. I turned. Harold Finch was standing in the doorway. His face was pale. His hands were shaking more than usual. His eyes were wet. "You found it," he whispered. I stood up slowly. The letter was still in my hands. "She was my grandmother," I said. My voice was barely audible. "You killed her." Harold didn't deny it. He didn't make excuses. He just nodded. And then he started to cry. "Every night," he said, his voice cracking. "Every night I come to this door. I stand outside. I listen. I wait for her to forgive me. But she never does. She never will." I looked at him, this broken, trembling old man, and I felt something I didn't expect. Not anger. Not hatred. Pity. "You should have told me," I said quietly. "You should have told me the truth from the beginning." He looked up at me. "Would you have believed me?" I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. I didn't call the police. I don't know if that was the right decision. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe Harold deserved to face justice for what he did. But justice for Margaret wouldn't bring her back. And punishment for Harold wouldn't heal the wound in my bloodline. Some debts can't be paid with prison time. I moved out of that apartment the next day. I took the letter with me. I took some of the photographs, the ones where Margaret looked happiest. I left the rest. They belonged to that room. That room belonged to the past. Harold died 6 months later. Heart attack. The building was sold. The new owners renovated everything. The back room was turned into a walk-in closet. No one knows what happened there. No one ever will. Except me. Sometimes I still dream about Margaret. Not the way she died. The way she lived. Laughing in a garden. Dancing in a kitchen. Holding a baby that wasn't mine but was mine all along. She doesn't cry in my dreams anymore. She smiles. And that, I think, is the closest thing to justice any of us will ever get.